I was born at Long Eaton, Derbyshire, which is about 7 miles from Nottingham, just over the border. And I was about 10, 11 years old when the war began. And so obviously the first few years of the war would mean very little to me, except that a lot of the neighbours had bomb shelters, but we didn't, because we had a very deep cellar. There was about 5 steps down to the cellar, which was, of course in those days there wasn't such things as fridges, but it had a stone thrall, which my mother put a mattress on it for me, so that whenever the sirens went, Mother and I went down there. Father was an engine driver, so sometimes he was there and obviously sometimes he wasn't. I used to dread going down because I said it wasn't a soft bed. And it was, at the side there was a piece that went under the stairs with a curtain down, and I hated it. To me that was a bogey hole, and it really frightened me as being a child. We had a heater down there, one of the, like an oil burner, and it really smelled, and I used to really hate it, but we had to go so that we didn't get bombed. And then when we had so many air raid sirens, but luckily no air raids where we were. They were of course trying to get to Chilwell, which was the biggest. It was army, and when I grew a bit older, of course, about 15, 16, 17, then I knew it was the army, because we used to have dates with them, you know, it was great. Then I can remember vividly also going to sleep overnight with who was my best friend at that time. It was when I was a bit older. I would be probably about 15, and her sister's husband was in the forces and was home on leave, and so they went out and we went to babysit, and consequently we stayed the night, which made 3 women in the one bed, and I was on the edge. And there was an air raid, and we decided there was nowhere to go anyway, we may as well stay where we were. And I thought, oh good, I haven't got to go down the cellar. And so I was very pleased to stay there and went fast asleep. And it was the only bomb that I remember, and that's a lie because I don't remember, but it was the bomb that they dropped, and it was at Sawley, which is about 2 miles from Long Eaton. And I fell out of bed onto the floor, and I did not wake up. And my friend woke me and said, "Come on, Margaret, there's been a bomb." And so I remember that so vividly, and yet it's all that long time ago. Must be all of 70 years ago. That's really about all I can remember of the war, except, I can remember one other thing. Coming home from school one day, in those days you weren't frightened of neighbours or talking to anyone. Nobody ever thought of us ever doing you any ill. And we were coming home, and the air raid siren went then. And this lady halfway down Cranmer Street, which led to my house, they were greengrocers, and they had a horse and cart in their big yard. And she said, "Oh, come on in, Margaret, and wait till the all clear goes." And I had to go past this horse in the stable to get to the house where she was. And I was ever so frightened of horses. And he reared up as I went by, and I was ever so frightened. But anyway, I stayed with Mrs. Newcombe, can't remember some names now, you see, with Mrs. Newcombe until the all clear went. And then when I got home, I can remember my mum saying to me, was you frightened of the bombs, but there wasn't any drop in it, just to be sure that we was going to be all right. She said, so I'm glad you wasn't. I said, oh, I was terrified. She said, but there wasn't any bombs. I said, no, but there was a horse. And I can always remember that. One brother who was 8 years older than me, and so he did go in the forces.
What did he do?
He was in the army. And I know he went to Italy. I can remember being young and going to Italy. I think that the fact that I can remember everything being short in the war, in every way, clothing and food, I can remember all that very well. And then after the war, it was a long time before things even began to get back to anything like normality. And I can remember working, that would be after the war, wouldn't it? Working when I was about 15, and it was in a greengrocery, and cakes and bread, they wouldn't sell them together now, would they? But they did then. And beans, tin beans were on points. We had so many points per week. And the lady in the shop used to let me take a tin of beans home every week without any points. I can remember that. And my mum used to be very pleased. I can remember coming home from work once and there was a queue at Woolworths. And you just went and got in it. You didn't know what the queue was for. You knew it was something that was short and that had come in. And so I stood in this queue and I got a packet of custard cream biscuits. And when I got in home, my mum said, you're late to dinner today. And I said, yeah, but you'll be pleased when you know why. And she said, why? I said, I've been queuing at Woolworths and I got a packet of cream biscuits. And that can remember ever so much that a long time after the war, things were still very, very scarce, very scarce.